Hello, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment this week focuses on the attack of the leftist mob and considers how roving bands of ideologically driven, intolerantly progressive students are gumming up campus freedoms and using threats of violence to bully faculty and administrators into hasty and illiberal reforms. To discuss his impactful articles exposing this alarming campus trend, we welcome Michael Jones, a business major at Auburn University and a contributing journalist at the College Fix. Michael, from Reed College to Texas State University to Dartmouth, coast to coast, you have foregrounded the success radical student mobs are having on American campuses. Mike, why do you think there is so little resistance to the implicit violence behind these increasingly disturbing instances of mob pressure at our colleges and universities?
Thank you for having me on, Dr. Duke. I think a big part of why there isn't like a big pushback from the administration is because the administration as a whole of most of these campuses is really not against the mobs of them. They might not be on the same side with everything, but for the large part, they mostly agree with them. And I mean, I think if these were conservative groups doing this on campus, there would be huge pushback and it would never get off the ground.
That's a great point, Mike. I mean, you think about that. If groups of conservative students, mobs, so to speak, 20, 30 large, started invading professors' university classrooms, sitting in on university professors' lectures because they were too liberal, this would not be tolerated in the least. As you've done your research on these articles, very well-written articles, have you tried to get a hold of university administrators? Have you gotten any condemnation of this behavior from university officials?
I wouldn't say any like broad condemnation of it. Like nothing explicitly saying, "Hey, we do not agree with these people." I don't get any of that.
What do they do? I mean, do they kind of ignore the issue altogether? I mean, they're awfully quick, aren't they, as your articles report, to cave in to these leftist protesters. So when you try to talk to them, what kind of things do they say to you at the administrative level?
It's mainly broad statements, talking about what they're planning to do, if they're planning to go meet their demands and meet their needs. That's a majority of what it is.
Yeah, and it's mostly kind of these garden variety reassertions, right, of we believe in free speech, we believe in the right of everybody to have a say, but they only believe in the right of certain groups to actually change things, not others. Talk a little bit about what happened out at Reed College in Oregon. This was a really telling story. You had groups of mobs, campus progressive mobs, student mobs, do what exactly?
So it started with them protesting a class because it was too white, too Eurocentric, when in reality the class it did focus on Western civilization, but it also included Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia. So it wasn't just a class about great white thinkers, but they invaded it for probably a year and a half, had signs, would interrupted once, heatedly debated some students in the class, young freshman students. And it eventually evolved into them going in, holding like month-long sit-ins in administration buildings until they could finally protest enough to get it changed. And they actually the administration has folded to the students.
This is remarkable. You have basically a freshman course, basically Western Civ 101. Bunch of freshmen, impressionable freshmen, their first time on campus, hearing a course about Western thinkers, a course that you pointed out isn't even really a Western thinker course completely anymore. The professor willfully expanded this course to include Egypt and Mesopotamian cultures, certainly non-Western cultures, to do all of that as a way of preempting this kind of meaningless protest. But for you say this didn't go on for weeks. This went on for over a year, these protests. Where was the campus? Where were the campus police? Where were the authorities that were allowing these kids who were paying for this class to actually hear it? Did they intervene at all? Did they do anything to try to mitigate this protest?
So the campus authorities did not really do anything to do it until it got violent, and then they put some made it where the students couldn't see certain faculty, just a couple of them, not them as a whole. But they were largely absent in the most part. They would say, we agree with their right to protest, we agree with their right for free speech, until it came down to them actually having really heated debates with freshmen. And the freshmen were really concerned because they were actually paying for the class, so they really wanted to hear it. And they weren't happy with it at all.
The administration said, as kids were protesting actual ongoing classes that they were not enrolled in, we respect their right to free speech, and we respect their right to protest. Mike, what if you got a group of conservative kids at Auburn University together to march right into the next Board of Regents meeting at Auburn University and protest? Do you think they would respect your right to interrupt their business then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, this is one-sided rhetoric, isn't it? It's one-sided. Talk a little bit. That's Reed College, and they changed the course, as you said. Also pretty alarming is what's going on at Texas State University, where a Republican conservative who's in charge of the student government is now under fire, and they want him removed. Talk a little bit about that.
So Connor Clegg, the student body president at Texas State, he is under major fire. The campaign is being led by the author of the infamous White Death article in the Texas State newspaper, and it's basically just some post mocking Asians from 4 years ago, and they have led march. They had a meeting and violently protested. I mean, people were yelling. The cops had to be called several times, and it was really alarming. They were sitting there protesting for probably 3 hours, leading chants, talking about his impeachment, and hey, he's got to go, all of that, and it was really alarming. So
really remarkable here is that this university, this student Republican who's in charge of the political government of the arm of the student body there, 4 years ago when he was on vacation, he made some unfortunate remarks about Asians. 4 years later, a young man by the name of Martinez, who was responsible for that infamous article in the newspaper there, the student newspaper there, calling for the death of white people. He's the one now leading this charge. It is remarkable. You have a student who was involved in journalism on campus, who called for the actual death of white people, who is now suffering no real ramification for that. He is, however, leading this march to have this Republican who's in charge of government removed. Is that about the size of it?
That's essentially the argument behind it.
And when this student, Martinez, called for the death of white people on campus, many campus voices defended his right to say that. And now Martinez is using his freedom of speech to try to run another person off campus because of their politics.
That is essentially it.
Mike Jones of Auburn University. To hear more from student reporters like Michael, follow the College Fix on Twitter and on Facebook.